Check out these clips from the pre-patch podcast.
The narrative right now that's out there is like, oh, Path of Exile 2 is going to kill Diablo. I don't agree with that statement. I don't
either, because I think Diablo will kill itself.
I don't think Diablo is going to kill itself.
I say it in game.
I think that you're going to see a world where both of them exist, and I think that both of them, like, and I'm specifically talking about PoE 2 and Diablo 4. I think just like how Kick or Twitch needs another counterpart, whether it's Kick or whoever else, to balance themselves out. I think that Diablo needs a PoE 2. Really, they should have looked at PoE 1, and I think they are trying to look at PoE 1 to try to, do what they're doing. But I think they need each other. It's the yin and yang, right? The balance to have.
I think that this genre of games, it's a lot more open, and people are less critical, on like their game, this genre. They're more accepting of other games living in the genre. So like you might have you will have your hardcore Diablo fans that are like steadfast and they will not do anything with PoE, but you're gonna have a majority that I think play the genre in its entirety, is what I'm trying to get at.
I get what you're saying, but these games are also massive time sinks, and if you're into ARPGs, you're going to pick the game that gives you the most value and is the most interesting for you to play specifically. Like right now, from what I was looking at with Path of Exile 2, it looks like it has more of a gameplay stylings that I would personally enjoy more. The infinite ability to dodge roll was very enticing. Yeah. The sheer amount of classes that they had and the differences in those classes looked really good.
Yeah, I feel like that's true too. I think the good thing about this genre is every game that comes out in this genre, they offer you so much, and it's pretty much you have a game for any style of your liking.
Yeah, it honestly reminds me of like, I hate comparing things to Dark Souls because it's fucking cliche at this point, but it almost has like that style of like third person action RPG, but
it's a lot slower,
isometric.
Yeah. Well, it's a lot slower, and it relies a lot more on like iframes and dodging than like
which I like. I like the precision aspect instead of just
this is
base
a
roll.
lot faster in comparison to D4.
In some instances, yeah, it's not as fast as like D3 is, and it's not as fast as PoE is. This is definitely a slowdown from PoE.
Which
I'm like a huge one.
Still faster.
This
than
also
D4.
is, I'm assuming, like beginning to mid area. So you're not going to see.
Yeah, this is.
You're not going to see where
late end game builds that are jumping around at the speed of light.
Well, they've already said it. Like inside of this this whole like showcase, they basically stated that like they don't mind if you're jumping around and like teleporting around. Like they would rather you have fun with your builds than be frustrated with them.
The freedom and the options to build that way. That's what PoE did the best, right?
Well, that's what PoE does the best. Still, like to this day, they still do an insanely good job with like giving you that power feel. Like you're not weak. You're actually very powerful late game. Like to a point that like you're almost too powerful in some instances.
Right.
Yeah, but again, they would rather it go that route than
100%. I'm not saying it's a bad game. I'm not saying it's a bad. I actually would prefer that. I would prefer to feel powerful late game.
The only problem I have with PoE and have ever had with PoE is it's fucking overwhelming, and especially whenever I tried to get into it originally, I was in the middle of like season 25, I think.
Okay, so this is one thing that I was talking to. I think I was talking to you and Sin about this the other day.
Yeah.
So I was under the same like wheelhouse when I first like recently, right? I went back before Diablo 4 came out. I was just like, fuck it, I'm gonna give PoE a try. We're gonna buckle in. I know there's a lot of content. Like Sin said, 40 seasons or 40 leagues, whatever they call them, right? There's a lot of content inside that game, right? And yes, if you want to dive into PoE as a whole right off the bat, there's a ton of content that you have to wrap your head around, right? But like if you just play the base game and you ignore a lot of like the end game content, a lot of like because like a lot of the league content you can't even do when you first play the game anyways. So like I started back in the last league when it started, I couldn't do anything with the current league stuff until I was like 40 or 50. So the friend that I was playing with was just like, ignore it. Don't even fucking pay attention to it. Just play the game, get through the storyline, get to end game, and then we'll figure that shit out. You'll start figuring that shit out one league at a time, essentially, right? So like, yes, it is complicated to get into when it first starts out with, because like PoE in and of itself, like the base game of PoE is an extremely complicated game, right?
Yeah.
Like the build system and everything like that, and like the color system that you have on like your gear, it takes a little bit to wrap your head around, right? Like if
Then
you
have all the league content that's
Yeah.
they're trying to get you
Yeah.
into, but it's just like
but if you just buckle in and just say, I want to learn this game,
Yeah.
it's not that hard. Like it really isn't that bad. So
Gotcha. Okay.
that's one misconception that I do want to kind of point out, because I know that like I'm guilty of it too, where I said the same thing when I first started tried to get back into it. Was like, oh, there's just so much shit to it. I don't want to even try it. I'm just way too late. I don't want to even go in. I don't even want to touch it.
It is very overwhelming.
It is overwhelming. But like if you actually like go into the
Buckle
game
down
and you look
yeah.
at, you don't even really have to buckle down. Just go into the game, ignore a lot of the stuff that you can't even use yet, right?
Yeah.
It just ignore a lot of the league content until you actually get to it. It's
You'd be
relatively easy to
surprised
get
at
into,
how
honestly.
much you can play it at your own pace.
Yeah,
Even if
Yeah.
it might not seem
100%.
like it, you're not forced.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And so like this game impressed me because originally PoE 2 was going to be
Like an extension
collectively,
of-
it was going to be like collectively PoE 1 and PoE 2 were going to be the same game. You could just play one or the other, right?
Pretty much like
They-
Overwatch.
Yeah, it got to the point though that like these guys actually got to the point where they were just like, we have so much content in our game, we can't put more content into it. Like we
Yeah.
can't do that. So finally they realized that they need to separate this off, and now PoE 2 and PoE 1 are going to be independent of each other. The one thing that I am very extremely impressed about, and I've said this about PoE a ton of times, that I'm impressed with their microtransactions, right? If you buy a microtransaction, if you buy like a cosmetic on PoE 1, you get it on PoE 2. If you buy a
very
microtransactions
good.
on PoE 2, you get it on PoE 1. So that's huge.
Unless it
And
says
I-
otherwise. Unless it says
Unless it says otherwise, yes. Obviously, there's going to be stuff that's specific for PoE 1 and PoE 2. But
Right.
generally, from what I've heard, a lot of the stuff that you already have in the game right now, so if you have a lot of your microtransactions right now, those are going to be usable in PoE 2 as well.
Good guy grinding gear games on that.
So
Yeah.
And their microtransactions
Also-
are really good.
they're huge.
Yeah.
Their microtransactions, I'm like, I wish Diablo 4 would have microtransactions like
Well, they
PoE.
have cosmetics for like every little detail.
everything. They have
Every
cosmetics for
spell,
weapons, they have
every
cosmetics for spells,
Weapon,
summons,
armor, even
armors,
recalls.
animations, recalls,
Yeah,
fucking
man. You name it.
so pets.
I will say
everything,
they're
man.
expensive. Some of them
They are expensive.
They can range, but they're good. They're worth it.
They're
you know,
extremely good.
not-
Yeah. I
I
will
think
say
it's
that I
also
would.
impressive that they're going to be releasing on all systems like right off the go with this one.
Yeah.
Whereas PoE 1, it was PC mainly, and then it came out on Xbox, and then it came out on PlayStation like years
Well, you
later. Like there's a big.
You got to
stagger
remember that
between them.
PoE 1 was released back in what 2000 and
I can tell you, hold on one second.
2011.
Well,
Sometime around there, like
the first
PoE 1
season
was 2013.
yeah, the
13,
first season
okay,
was
yeah.
2013.
so.
Gotcha.
Back in 2013, like you
We're
were
coming
never
up
going
on
to
10
have.
years.
And they're also
October
not going for the
20
prior generation
Yeah.
console, which
I
I,
mean,
think is a good step.
I think is a good start on that.
Yeah.
Like we need to be phasing out those previous generations.
Well, like we
to begin
just
with.
stated with Baldur's Gate, we would have been running into the same issues.
So
yeah.
I don't know. Like I've talked a lot. You guys can give your opinion. I'm just going to sit back and let you guys talk at this
I
point.
wanted to point out too. I don't know if you could bring that gameplay back up too, but after just seeing Baldur's Gate 3 gameplay, now comparing it to what we've been shown here, does this not look comparable to Baldur's Gate 3 graphics? Like as if this was just an ARPG version of Baldur's Gate 3. Like I am seeing.
I can see that.
I
Like,
can see it.
graphically, dude, the games both look stunning. This looks super amazing. Like
Big strides in top down. I'm really impressed with the
Dude,
lighting overall.
the
like the
lighting.
lighting
Sure.
as you round a corner.
Yeah. Dude,
Yeah.
I'm digging it. I'm digging the look, the what I can see it looks like it feels great. Like
I'll
it feels
say
like the speed and the grounding that I want in an ARPG. I don't want to, I'm gonna compare it to Diablo 4 again. I couldn't get into D4 because I felt weighted down, too clunky.
yeah.
I felt like there was a lot of features that were missing, like quality of life features that held me back. Bro, they have an overlay.
A map overlay, yeah.
Dude, imagine that in an ARPG.
Wow, an ARPG with a map
my
overlay?
God.
Who needs that, right?
Yeah.
Blizzard doesn't, that's for sure.
I mean, details just like that. They got it. They got it. It's an ARPG. They're necessities.
I will say like this this graphical update in comparison to like the graphical update between Diablo 3 and Diablo 4, I feel like this one
Big jump.
is a huge jump.
Well,
in comparison.
But to be fair, the years in between, what was D3? What was
D3 and D4
that was
have
old
about
too.
the same amount. Yeah, they've got
Yeah.
about 12 years between those two, I think.
Let's keep in mind that this game isn't released yet. Also, they could always downgrade before the game comes out. It's still got a year and a
highly
half.
Doubt that's gonna
Yeah.
happen, but
But
Highly
closed
doubt
beta
it
is a year and a half, so we don't even know when full release.
There's a lot of time for things to change. Things could improve even more with that
Yeah,
time
that's
and
very true. Yeah.
technology.
of that too. But who knows? Either way, what we're seeing in the current state looks beautiful. It is
Yeah, for sure.
gorgeous. I am very impressed, and I am so eager to play this, man. Like this is exactly what, like I was saying, what I wanted out of D4, and I think this is gonna be my D4 as D4 is to Sin. Like,
Well, I mean, yeah, sure. I mean, I do. Obviously, I love Diablo. I'm having a blast with it, but one of my biggest things wasn't even necessarily the nature of like the complexity that was the systems, and it wasn't even the leagues that caused me the bigger issue. It was like the I mean, if you guys are new to the podcast or new to our channels, you wouldn't know, but if you're a veteran of our show, you understand. Like, I do not like mods and having to have third-party systems to do certain shit or whatever else. And with PoE 1, like there was a system around like the trading and around like all of the, the orbs and the economy and all of these things that were to, and again, I have not played since, I don't know, Delve, I think was the last season I played, which was a while back. So maybe those things have changed. I don't know. Like that was a complication for me that I, and again, that's something that you don't necessarily have to do, but it was, something I didn't like. The other thing to me that I didn't like was the speed, the speed at which that the PoE got to at the very, very end, and obviously we're not seeing in game here. Like we don't know what the speed looks like, but I like the more slowed down approach that,
they've already said that speed's going to be just pretty much the same as PoE.
Yeah,
They're not going to be like it's slower. It's slower than the current PoE, but in game they're not artificially like slowing you down.
Well,
yeah.
Tracked out of your mind, I'm sure.
Right. I just what I'm talking, like I don't mind it being like this speed's fine. If a little bit faster, I get whatever else. And if your build just clears, because you can make a build in Diablo that just clears shit pretty quick and move. But I'm saying that like the speed at which you played PoE, it became ludicrous. Like it just became like this, just like I'm fucking just blasting through these maps.
I mean,
and that
Diablo
to me was
3
kind of like,
did the same thing, didn't it?
and yes, and I had that issue with that kind of arcadey quote unquote style. A lot of people were like, "Oh, that makes you feel powerful." I was like, "No, it just makes me feel like the content that I'm going through is just null and void, and it doesn't matter to me." So I'm not saying that speed is necessarily a bad thing. I just want the proper amount of speed, and like what I'm seeing here with like the way that the fights, this looks like it would feel good to have.
I think that what you said just barely, where like being able to clear something quickly makes the content feel null and void. I don't think that's the case. I think that at least in my opinion, I understand that that's your opinion, but like in my opinion, if I'm still struggling with content at end game with a full build, something's wrong, right? Like I should be able to go through trash mobs.
I'm not talking about
quickly,
trash though. I'm talking about the entire map
Like,
system. Like you
I
would
mean,
watch high end PoE play, and it was just
but again,
speedrunners.
if you're putting
high-end
hours and
PoE
hours and
play-
hours into a fucking character, you should be rewarded with
And
clear speeds.
high-end PoE play, a lot of those people were dedicated and devoted to finding those those 1%
It's the exact
builds.
same issue that I have with Diablo 4
Yeah.
doing all those nerfs. Is like if you're going to put in hours like 90, 100, 120, 200 hours into making a character and getting all those specific uniques, and like so making such minute changes in your build and shit, like specific mathematical changes in your build, like you should be rewarded with quick clear speeds, in my opinion. Like they shouldn't artificially slow you down just because they feel like you shouldn't be moving that quickly.
I feel there's a difference between a certain like a speed and then the ludicrous amount of speed that it felt like that people were running through, you know, the in-game mapping system. Like the in-game mapping system was just like, to me, I would watch people, and whether it was high end or just people that, you know, were playing the game, it just seemed like people were just like, I mean, it was
just broken builds. It's just broken builds.
Say, like it's broken builds, and that's how they choose to build and play the game. Because you see a lot of those high-end players, again, they're dedicated. They look for those min-max opportunities to just destroy the game. You know, I can most likely assume that they're going, you know, you've got the option to not have to build like that, and not be a ludicrous, you know, speedster. Like we haven't seen it yet. You know, obviously we have not seen anything of Endgame. We've only heard.
Oh, it's like Diablo 4. Like even after the nerfs, people are still clearing and putting out millions and millions and millions of fucking DPS. Like even after the nerfs, there's still people out there that can clear. It's just those people that are putting in massive amounts of hours. So
I mean, they're min-maxing.
Yeah, I don't know. To me, I get where you're coming from. I didn't personally like how I wouldn't say like it's necessarily the speed. I don't like how it's like a cookie cutter builds. Like everybody went down the cookie cutter build, right? Mm-hmm. Like there was a very specific meta builds for very specific clears. You know, I don't personally like that. I would rather have, you know, all builds do well across all content, but that's just not how it goes with Diablo and like action RPGs in general. So you're always gonna have to cook. You're always gonna have the meta builds regardless. So
yeah, you're never gonna get away from those.
Yeah. So yeah,
but it does look good. I am very excited for it. I was laughing. There was a couple of little jabs made at DF4, like, hey, we heard you guys. And we know you don't like getting CC'd for 5 minutes, so we just don't have CCs in our game. So have fun with that.
That's pretty legit, man.
I was like, damn, son, savage. Thanks for checking out these patch notes. These are small segments from the Pre-Patch Podcast, live every Thursday at 10:30 p.m. Eastern here on YouTube and on Twitch. You can also find all of our past broadcasts over on anchor.fm/prepatch podcast or on Spotify and Apple Podcasts or any other podcasting platform that you should so choose.